Like one of the questions was, if we don't have consistent funding, we can't pay for this. And what if chief delegates don't come together and pay for the election? His response was, well, then Eden fails. But you wrote that, dude, not me. And so to me, that's not an option. It's totally negligent to even suppose that we leave the opportunity for Eden to fail.
So there's been a lot of talk of HyphaDAO potentially coming over to the EOS mainnet, working with Eden. So could you describe firstly what HyphaDAO is and how you think it could add value to the Eden operations?
So HyphaDAO is a tool that currently exists on the Telos blockchain, and it is a DAO builder tool. And it's built by a bunch of very excellent humans who I think have their hearts absolutely in the right place and are trying to create tools to empower communities to enhance and grow civilization in a more sustainable and regenerative way that is breaking free of the shackles of the current control grid that we see in the world today. That's, I don't know, that's a bit of an elusive answer maybe, but bottom line, it's a tool. So bottom line, I view Hypha as a tool. It's a DAO builder tool. Eden is a DAO or people, it's a smart organization. Well, fuck, whatever. Like it's a DAO. So we want to be this appealing and digestible to the regular person. They kind of have an idea what a DAO is. Let's just call it that. Okay. So it's a DAO builder tool, and we as Eden could leverage that tool to help us organize. And again, so now it goes back to this whole circle idea and having roles, and roles fulfill a set of objectives or responsibilities that can be filled by people. And the people can come and go, but the role persists, just like I won't say it again. But so Hypha is a tool to do that. Amongst other things, Hypha also allows you to have pay bands and to have quests for people to achieve beyond just roles. And there's a tokenization, so you can introduce tokens into the Hypha tool, and these tokens can have different utility, different purpose. Some of them can be used for governance decisions. Some of them can be used as like a currency. You can have votes within that tool that are to decide on governance decisions, and you can decide on the quorum and the level of yay or nays in the votes based on the token the token count that exists. So there's a lot there. It's a really nice UI. I like the UI. It's a clean tool. They've done a really good job. It's 3.5 years in the making. And so the idea was, could Eden leverage that as a tool to help us organize? Because quite clearly we lack organization. Seems pretty obvious to me. I think anybody who's objectively look at Eden would recognize that this is a bit of a shit show. So how do we fix that? Well, we try to use tools that exist already. And we could, part of some people think, oh, we could make a DAO builder tool. It's governance as a service. Eden should do governance as a service. I totally agree. Unfortunately, there's more to that than just this election process. I think the beautiful marriage that I'd love to see happen is the Hypha tool, and you overlay into there our very elegant and unique consensus mechanism, and have those both be one, because Eden is just a consensus mechanism. That's all we really are as a community. We're just a bunch of people who use a process to select leaders and representatives to receive funding. That's kind of it. We don't do anything else other than that. I'd like to see us do more. And that's, again, what are we trying to do and what we're trying to achieve? Go back to that whole conversation. But if we can take that consensus mechanism and overlay it into Hypha, now you've got this DAO builder tool where organizations can come together, build their DAO on this tool, and select the consensus mechanism they want to use. Do they want to use a strictly just vote, stake, DPOS, potentially capturable by Pareto method to select what they do and to make governance decisions? Or do they want to use maybe both? Maybe there's a way you can, when I talked earlier about nothing is at the extreme in terms of where the truth is. It's all about gradients and gray, and let's overlap the DPOS way of doing things, the vote stake way, versus this way, the Eden way of selecting leaders and representatives is not captured by wealth Pareto. And maybe that's what a community chooses, or maybe they just choose that way. You have your community and they do these elections, and that's how they select their governing council or their leaders and representatives. So and that becomes an even more powerful DAO builder tool. To me, that's awesome. I hope that's where this goes. I have had a meeting with the Hypha team. in the past week, because one of my commitments is I have a relationship within the Haifa team, and there was an opportunity to have Eden use the tool. It turns out they want a bit of money for that, and I'm trying to work through how we work that out. It turns out that the Haifa team is in contact, and they are in conversation with the ENF to potentially bring this tool over to EOS. So that's pretty awesome. It's not that I'm a big fan of Telos. I'm a Telos Foundation board member. I love that community as well. There's tons of great humans there. And I'm of the belief personally that EOS.io is stronger together, and we just need to find a way to collaborate and work together and not be so divisive like we have in the past. And we are, like, that is happening with the coalition. There is some unity forming, and this recognizing that we are stronger together. And so, yeah, Haifa exists on Telos. And so maybe it can also exist on EOS, and we can serve more communities. And it's not about to be mutually exclusive in any way. But I think to those in EOS, was one of the things that came up a long time ago, is there's been a Pomelo pitch twice in a row to bring Haifa to EOS. So that might still happen. And that'd be great for the current EOS, the current Eden community to then leverage Haifa. But maybe we don't need to wait for that. That's going to take time to port over the platform. So maybe we can still use Haifa as it currently exists on Telos to satisfy some of our requirements to organize. We'll see. So I'm still going to try to make that happen. Hopefully we can do it in an economical way and just dabble, even if it's just hey, let's just try it. Can we use this? Is this something that people voluntarily want to participate in as Eden members? Maybe not. Like, maybe there's only a few of us who do. And it turns out that we just don't have the cohesive vision to want to try to organize. That's, again, this big question. Does the current community want to try to organize around something and achieve more than just individual campaign promises? Maybe not. Like, this, I'm not going to force my idea down people's throats. Like, it's fine. I have a view. I think we can do more. I think we can become governance as a service. And I think we can change the world and present this new means of doing democracy. But maybe we don't. Maybe that's not the unified collective view. And we're better off just being a workable proposal system and independence for the win. And that's the end of it. So maybe, and maybe there's a third option. Maybe there's a new Eden that forms. Maybe we just take this and copy paste it and form a new community that has a very deliberate and focused cultural point and mission, because we didn't have that at the start of this Eden. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems we've had, is we have people join not knowing what they were joining or why, or having a particular reason why they were joining or why, but it's all different. Like, maybe that's the challenge that we have. And maybe that's overcome just by starting over. There's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, let's learn from this attempt and let's iterate. Let's try again. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know.
So, Chris, could you tell us, in your opinion, what is the importance of on-chain voting in a blockchain voting mechanism?
Just accountability. Bottom line, it's and transparency, and you can trust the answer. So part of the thing with democracy, right, is like we've seen this in the current democratic system, is if you don't agree with the outcome, you then question the legitimacy of the process. And so that just creates all sorts of dissent, and it just pits people against each other. And they, oh, you cheated, that's why you won. So it's illegitimate. So I'm under an illegitimate tyranny of things I don't agree with. So when you can have voting that's on chain, then how do you can't question whether people cheated, because it's there. Go ahead, check for yourself. It's on chain. So that's ultimately the value of that.
So it's really important then to record on-chain votes for a blockchain voting mechanism. So the kind of discussions that we could save money with Eden by taking the votes off-chain is kind of a bit of a bad idea, let's say.
Well, yeah. What are we trying to do? Like, yeah, you take it off chain. It's, again, 2 steps. So we've taken 3 steps forward. You're going to take 6 back. Like, it's the idea of removing the UI and voting with blocks. That's a backwards step. So are we a progressive organization that's trying to move forward and recognize what the future of Eden can look like? Or are we just trying to scrape by and maybe we just go back to doing everything in Zoom and tracking it in Telegram and whatever? And some people don't know the context, so they're willing to throw that idea out there, and that's fine. But I think if we're trying to be forward looking here and seeing the value of what this can be and the bigger picture of what this can be, which I've referenced earlier in the other examples, you want that to be on chain. Like, that's the world is moving. This whole Web3 thing is about disintermediation and removing the need to trust. So you do that by putting things on a blockchain. You can look for yourself.
So I hear this a lot, and everyone's fearful of damaging it. but I don't really know what it is. So could you describe to me or to the viewers what social consensus is? And can you point to any examples of where it's been achieved? Ideally in crypto, but I'm open to any.
Social consensus. Well, I assume it's just where people come together to agree on something. I mean, social society, people involved, consensus is just coming to agree. And so does that mean everyone has to agree? No. So this is where it's like, what does consensus even mean? Is 51% consensus? Sure, if that's your definition of what consensus is. In EOS, it's got to be Byzantine fault tolerance, which is a supermajority, which is 2/3 plus 1 or greater than 67%. That's how consensus is defined. But this is what Haifa is a tool. You can set what that consensus threshold is. Do you need 90% of the people to agree? Okay, well, you can choose. Again, you choose what consensus means. So it's a subjective term. And then where is that being achieved? All over the place. But again, it's dependent on what the definition of consensus is. So standard elections, Canada has its way of doing first past the post. The US has their way, electoral districts. We have it in delegated proof of stake with 22/3. So you need 15 of 21 block producers. That's the consensus required to inflict change or enact change. In Bitcoin, you've got consensus required, 51% attacks, and how they make code upgrades and hard forks. So there's all sorts of examples. It's just
but that's those are like consensus mechanisms. I hear a lot that CDs are bound by their social consensus, but obviously social consensus isn't recorded, it's anecdotal by nature. I just wondered, how do we define what this social consensus is, and how do we not fall foul how do we not fall foul of it and break it?
I mean, I don't know. Like you say what it's the idea of you do what you say and say what you do. So right now we say what we do, we say what we're going to do in an election. And it's like what any political person does when they're on giving their speeches about all the shit they're going to do. And then they become elected and they don't do any of it for the most part. Like, and they can do whatever they want because there's no accountability. You've got a 4-year term, but away you go. We see that all the time. So in Eden, the social consensus is basically, what did you say you're going to do? And then you do it or not, and it's recorded so people can check what you said you're going to do, and they have the opportunity to hold you accountable or not. So
it's reputation. It just means reputation.
It's reputation. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's all about reputation. That's what this whole Eden thing, what's cool about it is it's, I've heard the argument that it's just it's a popularity contest. And that's true. A lot of things in life are popularity contests. The difference about popularity is it's not always positive. There's negative popularity. You can be popular for being an asshole. So yeah, you're popular, but it's not going to help you in an election. You can be popular for being a liar. So it's the idea that popularity is always this positive virtue is, I think, flawed.
Do you think then this notion of reputation should be tracked? Can it be tracked, and can it be put into a smart contract and used as a way for Eden members or voters to then be able to, at a glance, understand if a delegate has achieved or maintained their reputation during their term? Or is it really just about it being a feeling of individuals when they look up a delegate, or they do the research in the delegate themselves?
Right. So anything that goes into a smart contract requires objective inputs. So there has to be an oracle to feed a smart contract as to whether someone subjectively did what they said they were going to do. That is super difficult. Who gets to choose? What is that source of oracle? Who is the arbiter of truth when it comes to, yeah, he said what he was going to do, I say so, therefore that is now an executable command in a smart contract? That can't happen. But what should happen, and it doesn't currently happen, is there should be as far as Eden goes, there should be a place that any member can go and type in a delegate's name and have a list of what they said they do and a checkbox whether they said what they did or what they actually did do. Again, you require curation of this list, but that would be ideal, because what we're trying to solve for, one of the things we're trying to solve for within Eden, and this is again in Dan's book, and it's a great book, I encourage everyone to read it, is the idea of rational ignorance. And so we are rationally ignorant on all sorts of shit because there's just stuff you can't be bothered to try to figure out. It's too much time and energy to dig into every single video that every single delegate ever said they do and then check. How do you check that they actually did it or not? Like, How do you keep track of all that? That's a ton of effort, and it's not worth your time to try to do it. So we are rationally ignorant on what we have all individually done. And so the way that you overcome that is individually you choose to be vocal, and you are willing to use your voice publicly and hope people read it and listen to it. And then they can become informed about what you said you do and what you're currently doing. And so one of the things that we've tried to do after each election is encourage delegates who received funding to put a summary of how they spent their funding, ideally with links to blocks. Like there are things that are on chain that are irrefutable. And so you could do that. And so Adania, Edgar is working on an accounting tool where as delegates pull their funding, they can put in the memo, and there's a field like you can select what it was for, plus put a description in the memo. That's great. That's a great first step. That's withdrawing the funds and where did it go. But once I get it, I could have said anything in the memo, but it doesn't mean I'm actually doing it. So there's always going to be this challenge, like this idea of social consensus and having this source of truth. It's hard. It's hard. But what we should do at least is have somewhere for people to go with an opportunity for delegates to put their information, almost like a Wikipedia that we can all have access to, and have an ability to like comment to other people's things or disagree with it and defend yourself, and almost like a forum that's a one place. So during an election, someone who is rationally ignorant, because they absolutely can and should be, can go and say, oh, I'm in the room with Michael. Let me type Michael's name in the portal, and I can now read really quickly. What did you participate in previous elections? What was your status? What were the notes about how you spent your funding? And then I can ask you right then and there on camera, hey, it says here you did this. Did you do that? And you get a chance to be kind of put to the task. There's always going to be a break, though. You could just say one thing and totally lie about it. But hopefully there's someone who's got the time and energy to go through and check people. And hey, this is bullshit. He said he was going to do this. He totally lied here when he said that. He was asked this question. He did this. Like that can, and then you use your voice and use the community and media outlets like yourself to say, hey, this guy's a liar. You should let everybody know. And that's how social accountability takes place. Like this is how humans evolved, right? We evolved in tribal settings. Gossip serves a purpose. And the primary purpose is to make sure that people found out about the dickheads and they didn't help them. And that was kind of bred out. Like if someone's an asshole in a small community, you can rest assured. I grew up in a small town, a town of 500 people, very small. Everyone knew everybody and everyone knew everyone's business. And some people are like, oh, I hated that. I hate this idea that everyone, I love the anonymity of a city. Well, guess what? Anonymity of a city allows everyone to be an asshole if they want, because there's no social accountability. When you're a dickhead in a small town, everyone hears about it. And guess what? You pay a social price for being a dickhead, and you maybe stop being a dickhead, or you just become ostracized and you don't flourish in that community. So to me, the whole thing about social accountability comes from people need to be social, and we need to actually have a place that we can go or an opportunity for people to hear of the gossip. We need to be willing to accept that gossip's actually a good thing.
So I guess in the EOS and Eden community, the gossip would be had on Telegram, which is a nice segment to my next question, because I think it was just the day before, your head chief delegate, Luca, he actually made some quite serious allegations about you. And I just wanted to put those to you now and get your thoughts on them, really, because he stated that you were effectively defaming him in his opinion, or your opinion of his opinion on Eden, and then he actually said that you were gaslighting him afterwards, and obviously that's quite a serious offence to do. It's a tantamount to bullying. So I just wondered, is he misunderstood? Is he exaggerating? What is your side of the story on this issue?
So I mean, I'm sarcastic sometimes, and so if I put something down, I didn't explicitly say, Luca, you're a piece of shit and I don't agree with you and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're trying to wreck Eden, whatever. Never said that. But he wrote himself, then Eden fails. Like one of the questions was, if we don't have consistent funding, we can't pay for this. And what if chief delegates don't come together and pay for the election? His response was, well, then Eden fails. But you wrote that, dude, not me. And so to me, that's not an option. It's totally negligent to even suppose that we leave the opportunity for Eden to fail. So he said the words, like, it's not like I have to rephrase it. And the one thing about community team building for the win was a comment. He reached that whole little thing was he said something kind of ignorant to the previous delegates. And it's like, it's rude. And it's like, my comment was team building for the win. And then I posted a link to Amazon book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Right. So it's like, it's funny. It's supposed to be like, none of that is saying you're an asshole, Luke. I didn't say anything specifically. You can read into that whatever you want. it wasn't great team building. I mean, it's not even, and it's other people have commented. Like I've seen other people comment, dude, like you're being a bit aggressive. Like, are you seriously like, so it's not like I'm the only person who's noticing his conversational approach and his style. I'm trying to make light about it. I'm trying to like use sarcastic humor. And if you want to say that I'm just gaslighting or whatever, fine, man, read it however you want. I'd like to achieve consensus here. I'd like to find a middle ground. If you can't laugh and read what you wrote and see how maybe that was a bit rude and aggressive and slightly harsh, then fine. That's okay. Fine. What do you want me to do? But but I'm not here to like, I'm not about kissing people's ass. So, and I'm not going to sugarcoat everything. I'll try to be nice and I'll try to like use sarcasm. Maybe it's condescending sometimes, but it's not meant to like deliberately. Half of it was a joke. Like putting that book, the link of how to influence people, like that was supposed to be funny. Like, come on, if you're going to take it so serious and now I'm gaslighting everybody and like, it's okay, fine. I can't control your feelings, dude. If that's how you want to perceive that and that hurts your feelings, unfortunately, your feelings are yours to control. It's not on me. I didn't say anything explicitly negative towards you. Your own words have said it for themselves. You're willing to let Eden fail. I'm not. So it's like you didn't say that. And to me, that's a powerful statement to make. And it's not the right approach in my view. So yeah.
I think it's fair to say that many people in blockchain and crypto are a little bit sensitive, and we could all do with a bit of self-deprecation. I think it's quite healthy and it wouldn't do us any harm. Okay, so let's like move away from Eden now because we've spent a long time discussing it, and you're probably pretty bored of discussing it. So let's move to something really, really easy. Describe to me your understanding of press freedom.
Press freedom. Let's see. It's freedom to say whatever you like, freedom of speech, basically. It's so you can say whatever you want and you shouldn't be restrained by any controlling authority to not speak what you believe to be your truth. And it's up to us humans to be, put on our big boys and girls pants and decide whether we want to agree with something or not. It's the idea of like misinformation. It's like, according to who? Like the idea that like there's just absolute truths. According to who? Like who is the arbiter of these truths? The science is settled. It's not how science works. It's never settled. You've misunderstood the scientific method. So the idea that, so press freedom is the ability to speak what you feel in your subjective view is the truth as you see it. And you should not be restricted. Even like the idea of hate speech to me is something that's subjective. Like, some speech sucks and we shouldn't ideally not elicit violence, but it's a gray area. Like it's like how much coddling do we need as a society? And right now we're being just coddled to hell. And it's that expression, hard times make for strong men make for good times make for weak men, and weak men make for hard times. So right now we're in this weak men stage where we can't even have an opinion that's divergent from the consensus of those who were the arbiters of truth. It's like we're all just, everybody gets a prize. Everybody's a winner. You're good just the way you are. It's like, no, you're fucking not. Like, grow up. Like, we all can improve. We should all be striving to be better and recognizing a little bit of humility that we're not always right. We're not always perfect. And so that's probably a big divergence of what your question was. But anyway.
That was good. That's what we want. We want to hear your proper opinion on these things. So we get this message to us a lot. And I want to get your opinion on this. So do you think that Bywire would better serve the community if we produced positive propaganda in favor of EOS? Because we get asked to all the time, very, very sincerely, without the realization that they're asking for propaganda. Or is EOS better served with a hard-hitting independent news organization that is free from the burden of any kind of tyrannical corporate control?
That's tricky. Better served EOS. So in the end, any blockchain is only as successful as its community is cohesive. So there is a fine line between creating content that can be perceived as FUD. And so, but this is all a perception subjective game. And that being said, people know when they're being lied to generally. Well, actually, no, I gotta take that back. People are so conditioned nowadays. I'm not sure if they know. So maybe, I think in the end, I believe that we should be willing to be honest and we should be willing to look at the things in the shadows. but it's tricky. Like it's so tricky because everything's so hype based right now and narrative based. And if we're not coddling the hype and the narrative, then we do risk people not wanting to join the community. It's a tricky one because it's like free speech about the government and like the society at large is different than free speech within a community. And I'm not sure the like.
Why is free speech for a population different for those in a community?
It's because if it depends on your intention. So like if we're trying to draw people into EOS who already have a misconception about what EOS is, and they already have this view that it was a scam and it was but it was basically a scam coin, rug pull, and so that's already there. If the purpose is to grow the community, then there's a sensitivity around how far down the path of just blatant, like for example, you could point to, you could do a piece on EOS is captured by block producers and it's a cartel who are voting for themselves and they've elected Eve and it's all backdoor deals and it's all like, that could be a narrative, that could be one's truth. And so, but is that a useful narrative to really propel into the public sphere to grow EOS? Probably not. So this is where it's like, it's tricky. Like it's does that mean, but then on the other hand, do you just do fluff pieces and just make it all about the rah, EOS is great and just put your head in the sand? Well, then you lose credibility and then no one takes you serious. So this is where it's just tricky. It's just tricky. Like this is a really hard one to have. There is no perfect answer to this question. I think it's all about the gray and not living in the extremes. And if you're going to do a piece that points out the cartel-esque nature of what EOS might be, to also then include the fact that voters are willing to pull their tokens off exchanges if they don't want to have an exchange vote with your tokens. You're welcome to do that. And maybe exchanges actually are voting with their own tokens. The idea that all tokens that live on an exchange belong to other token holders and other users, is that a fact? Do we know that for sure? Maybe exchanges are playing the market maker role and they're actually absorbing some of those tokens and they actually do own some of them. So like there's this, so as long as I suppose, and this is just my subjective view, that the presentation of the material is as balanced as it can be, then go at it, right? But it's hard. I mean, as you know, I don't know. And I don't do media. I'm not into this thing. I mean, this is just what do I know? But that's just, yeah, it's a good question. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one because obviously we want to cover things honestly and truthfully, but anything that's negative within the community will be shared the least because of the FUD aspect, right? Whether it's true or not. Let me ask you this then: why do some people think EOS is a scam?
Because of its origin story, bottom line. So people view the origin story of EOS being that of the origin story of Block One, and that is where the tension arises. And it's the idea of what did Block One say they were going to do? And I say Block One is this amorphous entity because there's many individuals involved. What did they say they were going to do versus what they actually did? And then that begs the question of, okay, well, what did they say and what exactly did they mean? Because now we're into subjective interpretations. Some of it was pretty clear. And then it's like, what do they actually do? Well, again, how do we know exactly what they did? Do we know the ins and outs of how much money it cost when they gave money to Galaxy Digital and all the other VCs? Like, do we know the details of all of those details? Do we know how much legal costs went into that? And like, there's other pieces that we don't have visibility to. And there's restrictions on Block One in terms of what they could and couldn't do that we probably also don't have visibility to. So there's just a shitload of assumptions. And unfortunately, and then bottom line, the price did not perform long term. It did for a while. Like I saw Dan recently comment that people had plenty of opportunity to sell out of EOS. That didn't go over too well as a comment because a lot of people stuck around because they believed in the promise. So in the end, it comes down to the price performance and the subjective view of how that $4 billion ICO was used and what they thought it was to be used for versus what they perceive it actually was used for. And that, I think, is the crux of this it's a scam narrative. But it's misinformed, right? Block One is not EOS. They are not the same thing. So to say EOS is a scam is not fully understanding what the true origin story was. And then we get into, there's a lot of competition in the blockchain space, and there's a lot of individuals from other communities who'd be going out of their way to paint EOS in the worst light possible so that it didn't compete with their chain. So it's, it's a tricky space to play in, and narrative and hype are still winning the day. We're still in the early internet stage of all this, where pets.com and like all of these, like the .com bubble was all about just trailing the hype. There was no true value at the time. And it was just a hype and narrative based. Eventually, value aggregated to the best technology and to the best true delivers of value and what was monetizable and sound business strategy. That will happen here as well. And I think many of us who are still in EOS are in it for that longer term vision. This is a technology that is superior. It does deliver value propositions that Bitcoin cannot, that Ethereum cannot. So if you see that and you see the potentiality of what the future can hold, you're still here. Same with Eden. The potentiality of what Eden can be. It's not what it is today necessarily. And it's not necessarily around the hype and the narrative of today. It's like, what could it become? And we have to have a broad enough view and willingness to be daring to try to pursue that initiative.
So then, in your subjective opinion, do you think that Block One acted in a negligent and or fraudulent manner, as was alleged by the EOS Network Foundation principal Yves LaRose last year, towards the end of last year? And I think that was obviously in relation to the $4 billion token sale ICO. Given where we are now with a $1 billion market cap, $4 billion raise, and his words, I put it to you, do you think Block One acted in a negligent and or fraudulent manner?
I think there's a whole lot that I don't know. And so I'm willing to respect the fact that I don't know what I don't know. And I'm also I try to, as much as we've mentioned maybe my disagreements with Luca, generally speaking, I try to find consensus. I'm a very much, we're stronger together than apart. I didn't agree with the freeze. I think that Block One, albeit they may not have fulfilled some of what we perceived to be their commitments, they did do some of what we thought they were going to do. They released the code. That was done. And they've done other things as well. They helped build Pomelo. They helped fund that. And so the question is, what's the long-term play here? Like by us alienating Block One, we alienate Block One. Like there's still a hope. There's still a chance that B1 could support our ecosystem. So why close that door? Like, it's like to deliberately close that door. I don't agree with Yves' tone towards Block One. I understand why he's doing it. I understand I think I understand what he's thinking and the value of what he's trying to do. And that's fine. I don't agree with it. I think we're better together. I think we should always have an extended hand and leave the door open. And we seem to be closing that door. Well, I say some within the ecosystem are trying really damn hard to close that door. So there is zero opportunity for Block One to attempt to support our ecosystem. And there's some of us who are working to still try to foster a relationship. So I don't think the door is fully closed. I don't agree with that fraud narrative. I don't think that that's accurate. I think that people they assume too much, and they are letting their egos get ahead of themselves, and they aren't respecting that they don't know what they don't know.
So do you then support the legal action that the ENF is taking against Block One, or are you against it? I can see you shaking your head.
No, I don't agree with it at all. I think it's a crazy idea.
Why don't you agree with it?
I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So to me, this is more political than it is actual, if I'm going to be fully honest about that, which is fine. It's fine. I get it. Like there is politics involved. Yves is representing a large cohort of token holders, obviously, who have felt that Block One have not lived up to their expectations. I assume that's the case. And so they are very supportive of an attempt to get that, get back at them, right? And get value extracted from Block One and given back to the network. And I get it. It's fine. I don't agree with it at all. However, I don't think that it's going to go anywhere. If Block One has been good at anything, it's been at legal. So we're like, and how much cost is it going to be for the network to attempt to do this? Like, it's not like legal battles are cheap. They've got more money than us. How much inflation is going to go towards this battle, where instead we could just try to work on unity and recognize that, things didn't work out as maybe we had thought they might. That's fine. it's time to move forward. Like it's backwards looking also. Like I'm very much, let's just recognize what didn't go our way. Let's learn from these mistakes, if there were any, and move forward with action and deliberateness and try to be productive. And so to me, it seems totally foolish, but this is no surprise to anybody who's been listening to what I'm saying. I was against the freeze early on. Oh, it's just because you work for Helios. No, dude, I was against the freeze before Helios even existed. So I've been absolutely consistent. And to me, it's just it's an unfortunate direction that we're going in. I get it. Some people gravitate to that. Some people who think EOS is a scam will also, like, again, the politics of this will look at, oh, sweet. Okay. So like, I get it. I just don't agree with it.
So you feel like the EOS Network Foundation could spend potentially the millions of dollars that they're going to spend on legal fees on projects or just generally supporting the community? You think that would be a better contribution?
Yeah. Well, especially if this doesn't yield anything. Like, you're going to sue Block One and it's going to cost you. And if you don't win, then that was all net negative. So unless you're going to draw in more community members and raise the price, but that's not happening. Like this narrative of fighting Block One has been known for a while now. I don't see the price performing exceptionally well. Only yesterday and today has it actually started to outperform. And it's not like some new news came out about the litigation attempts against Block One. So I don't think so far this has proven to be a winning strategy. It's just simply fueling the people who have all this hate, and they are going to lap it up and buy into it. That's great. I'm not a big fan of using hate and negative energy as a means to propel a community forward. I think that's exactly the last thing you want to culture and curate within your community. I think we should work on being inclusive and inviting and use those funds to be put to better use. I hate paying lawyers. Nothing against lawyers. If you're a lawyer, it's great. You perform a lovely service, but it's a lot of cost for that service. I'd like to see more of that done on the blockchain if I could help it, but
So would you, if someone asked for your professional recommendation, would you then trust Block One and, let's say, the CEO, Brendan Bloomer, enough so that you would positively recommend the two of them?
Well, it depends on for what. Recommend them to launch an ICO and get a community engaged? Yeah, they've done that great. They did a great job. Have they had a hard time delivering on what voice was to be? Yes. But again, we don't know what we don't know. So like the other thing about, like, I have sympathy towards the idea that Block One was probably more successful in their ICO raise than they intended to be or expected to be. And that put a huge bullseye on their back. They had to be extremely cautious. And so then you get into the realm of, like, and Dan has told us this, he's been clear, compliance and legal took over. And I can see why. Like, who wants to risk going to jail over this, right? Like, so you kind of have to, like, sorry, I said I was going to do something, and guess what? Shit changed. Like, you need to be, I mean, this is life. Welcome to life, right? If people, it's the idea that it wasn't a contract. Social contracts aren't written contracts, and they're social for a reason. Like, sometimes the landscape changes. I promise I'm going to go in that direction, and I walk into a canyon. Well, I said I was going to do it, so I'm just going to walk off the friggin' cliff. Like, give me a break, right? You're going to take a detour. You're going to work around it. Like, this is life. Like, you need to be somewhat agile. I'm training my children to not just bullheaded do something. It's like, no, think on your feet. Sometimes you got to, like, pivot. This is a term we use sometimes. And so in terms of recommending B1 and Brendan Bloomer to do something, depends on what. Yeah, sure. Like, I don't hold ill will towards them. I see them as being an organization and an individual who can still contribute value. Call me naive, and I'm sure those who will exactly that. Calling me naive. Okay, fine. I'll be an eternal optimist on this. And I do believe in humans deep down are still good. They're still good in all of us. And even you might think Brendan was a scammer, and this doesn't mean he's necessarily a bad person. So to dismiss that as being a possibility is just dismissing future opportunity.
Well, Chris, you're naive. People are people, but corporations aren't people. But I'm only joking. I just couldn't resist calling you naive.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy. I'm happy to be naive, because that's right. I believe in my philosophical views on humanity that we are all one. And this is just but a blip of an experience. And when we die, we reconnect and we're reunited as one again. So me harming you and me talking bad about someone else, like Luca, I don't have any, like, I want to love everybody, and I don't want to harm Luca and cause him to feel, I mentioned, like, it's not up to me to control someone's feelings. Doesn't mean I'm totally insensitive to it. I don't want to go to my way to be a dickhead. Like, there's no joy in that. Like, I get caught up because I have an ego too. But I mean, in the end, I need to remind myself, no, like, there's more to this. let's be kind. Like, let's have a little compassion for people. And again, recognize you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what led to the decisions that someone made. You don't know if they anguished over making those decisions and they feel terrible about it. You don't know that because you never gave them a chance. You just assumed a whole bunch, made a firm opinion, and now unwilling to change your view because you're right, because your ego says so. Yeah.
Good answer. All right. So you're Mr. Chris Barnes. But how did Mr. Chris Barnes end up as an EOS influencer, a pretty prominent one, I might add, a repeatable Eden Chief Delegate, President, Head Chief Delegate? I think you won all of the test elections. And you're also a Helios Guardian. So, what's your story? And what the hell's a Helios Guardian? It sounds like a mythical newspaper. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Eden was I was an EOS fan. So I mentioned that I got into Bitcoin in 2013 purely for philosophical reasons. I really did not want to do it just to make money. I know everyone's off. Anyone who says that's full of shit. No, I am not. I believed in the value of taking away the power from money. We spoke with this already. So that was my main reasons for getting into this. Then EOS came along and I absolutely philosophically connected with Dan's purpose, as he stated it, securing life, liberty, property, justice for all. Philosophically, that absolutely aligned. And I believe that. I'm from a small town. I'm a small town Canadian. I grew up small town. I trust people way more than I should. And I've been burned many times. And that's who I am. I can't change it. It's just the person I am and whatever. So I was philosophically aligned with EOS from the beginning. Genesis holder, followed it from the beginning. Uber fan. I watched everything EOS video. I chatted in one of the live ones and Kevin Rose, like they read my question and they answered. I was like, oh yeah. I was like an Uber fan, just a guy who loved it. I worked in renewables. So my background career wise, I've done a few things, some of it entrepreneurial. And I got into working on wind turbines and I was a site lead for General Electric. And then and then eventually moved to another company and I ran their solar ops division. I kind of created it from scratch. And so I did that for 12 years in total. So I'm very much into renewables. I don't believe that humans are the cause of global warming, whatever, but I still believe in the value of renewable power. And then I got laid off from that job in March of last year. And it was a restructuring, essentially. It's not because I did a shitty job, I don't think, but it looked like a classic restructuring. I lost that job. I had a severance package. And then Eden came out of Dan. So I was always an EOS fan, quiet in the background. Eden came out and I was like, oh, well, I'm laid off. Dan was doing AMAs and I started taking notes because I'm a reasonably fast typer. So I took notes as he was doing the AMAs and I put those in the EOScommunity.org forum. And that was sort of the intro to being involved in the community because I had the time. And then the first trial election happened. 2 days before that trial election, I put up a post saying, hey, what are people's proposals? John Heater put his up and I said, hey, can I represent your proposal? Didn't know him. He didn't know me. And I reached out to him. He answered me on Telegram. He said, yeah, sure, go for it. And that was the beginning. That first trial election last May, I ended up representing John, being myself, and people who didn't know me, achieving consensus, and ended up becoming the head chief, the Satoshi of that first trial election. And that was the beginning. And I was still laid off. And I had an opportunity to go work with another company, building a solar ops company to manage and operate solar, like industrial size solar facilities. I kind of didn't really, I was like, something, I felt compelled. And prior to that, I was going to get involved in politics. I was like, I'm going to run to be a member of parliament for my area on a more populist party because I don't agree with the way things are going. And I'm more of a libertarian, like maybe socially liberal, but fiscally conservative type of viewpoint. And I wanted to, I was tired of just complaining and being pissed off about the way things were going. I have 2 young kids. I'm like, I'm going to do something. So I was like, I reached out. I was actually close to trying to become the rep for this obscure party that wouldn't have gone anywhere, but I wanted to try. And then this Eden thing came along, no, this is the answer. I'm not going to fix a system from within a broken system. We need a new system. Eden to me represented a new system. So I thought, okay, let's just see where this goes. So I lived off my severance. I was present. Anyone who's following saw that I did open office hours, the second trial election, also chief delegate. And I was around. So I worked for free, living off my severance, tried to sit at my desk full time to contribute to this thing, which seemed like a noble cause philosophically, not because I thought I was going to make any money. Then the first official election came. I became a chief delegate there. And then this freeze happened. And then Helios, Brock, I don't know Brock. I didn't know Brock. He was going to start this Helios thing. And I'd worked with Hernan from EOS Starter. He, again, didn't know me, but I started to help him a bit with EOS Starter. And so he got to know me a bit and saw what my skill set was. He knew Brock. He was helping build the team for Helios. Brock put up some tweets looking for people. I was recommended by the community, and he gave me a chance. Brock said, hey, do you want to be the project manager, also known as Guardian, of this thing called Helios? And I was like, yeah, shit, yeah, this is a great opportunity. And it was about, for me, it was like, my alignment was trying to help EOS help Eden. And what better way to help EOS or help Eden than to be involved with a budding new VC under the kind of the wing of Brock, right? Who I obviously knew. I've watched every single one of Brock's interviews. I totally philosophically aligned with how he speaks and how he presents himself. And so I was like, this is an amazing opportunity. Sweet. He didn't know me. It was the weirdest job. I mean, there's no classic job interview. Like, it's been a very, like, it's neat. Like, it's been a really neat thing. And that was sort of what got me here. And yeah, so I'm the project manager for Helios, trying to build the team and curate what we can do, and working through the startup of a startup that's looking to, be a deliberate VC in the EOSIO ecosystem.
That's such a cool story. So let's talk a little bit about Helios then, briefly. So Helios describes itself as a Web3 VC and incubator. So it's kind of like a startup VC. So I wondered, could you tell us how many projects that Helios has ventured capital into since its inception, and which of those investments really stood out as a success for you guys?
So in terms of capital investments, I don't want to speak about any of that, just because if it's not public, then it's not public, and for a reason. But what we have been able to do that is quite public is the incubator side of things. So we've done this basically incubator light and Gabriel Shaw, one of the guys we brought in, he's excellent. Like, anybody who's worked with Gabriel will recognize he's a powerhouse. He's extremely intelligent, and he's very, very good at incubating and curating projects. So for me, like, I ran power plants. I made poker tables. I was a bartender. Like, I've done I've never been an incubator. Like, or tech startup. Like, that's not my background. So so Gav built this incubator program up from scratch, essentially. And we've had 30 projects come through or are currently going through, or more. It just might be more than 30 now. And it's basically helping these projects curate their business plan, their go-to-market strategy, the cost of customer acquisition, like all these pieces. What's their actual financial plan? Like, how is this thing going to make money? Gav often says a token, how does he say? A token issuance isn't a business plan, or like a token model isn't a business plan. Like, it's not. And a lot of these, we're seeing like there's some breaks. We want to create what a traditional successful business is and would be, and bring that to the blockchain space, where you can't just do a token issuance and then be successful. That's not what makes a proper business plan. So that's sort of how we're trying to curate projects so that they're positioned to be investable from a VC. And that doesn't even have to be Helios. Like this, we're trying to help them be investable to anybody they might be able to go to receive investment and to help them along. So that's been our main sort of thing for now. And also we do try to create content around the EOSIO ecosystem. So the one good thing about Helios that, again, I'm perfectly aligned with is it's all about EOSIO, where it's a Web3, yes. And we're trying to change our branding a touch to draw in people from outside of EOSIO. We need to move beyond our bubble to bring in more eyeballs. And then once they're in, they can sort of see, and we'll help them realize it. The reason why EOSIO is awesome is for all of these particular reasons. And if you're looking to build a project that's going to be Web3 based on a blockchain, EOSIO, any of the EOSIO projects are kind of obvious for many, many of the use cases that we're seeing. So we're kind of doing that now. We're trying to reposition. So if you go to our website, it won't be as prominently displaying EOS, Telos, all of the EOSIO and EOSIO as a brand itself. We're trying to be a little more broad so we can draw in more people who don't have this EOS is FUD and it's a scam coin already in their mind. We got to get past that, draw them in, and then actually have a rational conversation about what's great about this technology. So we're doing all that. And then we create media. We do podcasts. We do futurist live streams. We do EOSIO top 5 moments of the week, YouTube videos to just help create content that is a proponent and positive influence for the space.
So it seems to me that the incubation projects and the whole process has gone really well. Could you speak of who are the most successful projects to come out of the incubation process? And can you talk a little bit about what they learned during that time working with Gabriel and yourself and Brock, and how valuable is this incubation process?
From what the feedback we've gotten is that it's been incredibly valuable. A lot of the pitches have come in and they'll do an initial pitch. It's like, you've got a deck, you're here as a budding business. Some of them enter different stages. Some are like pre-seed, some are seed, some have been like Series A, essentially. So we've seen all, and pretty much everybody has had a pitch that has changed. So we've like fixed a lot of the delivery, and just the delivery. Like, it's also like, how do you give a pitch, right? Never mind the content of the slides, but how do you do it? How long does it take you? How many, like even just basic stuff, like having a slide that's just words versus bullet points that you speak to with visuals, right? I mean, the idea is you want to be memorable, and you want to, like, if you're pitching to a VC, there's a good chance they're seeing many pitches. So you got to stand out. So there's a lot of these little bits that can help a project be successful. Of the successful projects that have come through, there's been a variety. Like, we've had some standout projects. We've had Good Block from the Telos side of the ecosystem. They working on D-Store, which is this great decentralized storage alternative solution. That's and so they've made some tweaks to their. Like, they were already pretty mature. Like, they didn't need a lot of help really, but you could still see they saw benefit in what they were doing. There was Energy Ledger is another great project that has come through, looking at basically putting on a blockchain carbon credits of sorts, essentially, and helping larger dirty oil companies be more green and helping them to curate what they're doing. And so he's made great strides in his proposal and his pitch to be able to execute on that plan. We've seen some really good ones come through. There was one, Polaris Music. There's a guy, Andrew Ware, who's active in the EOS community. He had a great idea, and he really did, I think, kind of shape and reconsider how he was approaching trying to get funding and what his approach was. And so there's been a bunch. I mean, there's a lot to name. Canada Weather is another project that's doing weather balloon, weather sensing equipment that runs on a blockchain. You get paid to basically have the equipment. And it's like changing the idea of, you know what, you shouldn't be here looking for VC. You should be looking for angel investors. And it's like, oh yeah, like some of the stuff is like, oh shit, okay, that's a whole kind of different focus. And just trying to help, like, in the end, we just want these projects to be successful. So we're trying to give them everything we can that would help empower them to beyond just money, because money isn't enough, right? You can throw money at any problem you want. Doesn't mean it's going to get solved. Like, that's not how it works. You need to empower the team and help them develop the tools themselves so they can be successful. And I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do, and how Gav approaches things. It's like, it's providing the toolkit for a project to then be able to be successful and execute, not just here's a bunch of money, good luck. Like, that's not like the idea of a VC just swing the bat at everything they can. It's like, yeah, okay, swing the bat, but also like help help the pitcher work on their technique to throw the ball better, or help, there's technique involved with these things that can increase your ability to actually execute on what you're trying to do. So that's, I think, a lot of the focus.
So, I mean, at some point, though, as a venture capitalist organization, is Helios planning to make equity investments in projects in the EOS ecosystem? And if so, what's the kind of timeline for that?
We are looking to make public investments. Absolutely. That is totally on the roadmap. The timeline is elusive at this stage. Well, there's things that are outside of our control and outside of my control as well, that are sort of stepping stones to get us where we want to be. So this might be a little slower in some people's eyes in terms of public announcements of capital deployment. But it's for a reason, and we're just doing things maybe slower than what people would like. We'll look at Block One. I mean, again, great example, right? People aren't happy with the pace of progress. Doesn't mean there aren't good reasons. So we have reasons why things might be slower on the public front, but they're coming. I mean, I'm as committed as ever, and I know Brock is, and the whole team. We're still going to execute on this. It's going to happen. It's just happening slightly slower than we want, and we'll get there when we get there. I mean, I don't want to give any time, giving timelines, giving promises. You're just kind of setting yourself up to fail, especially when things are outside of your control. So you have to be sensitive to 3 months from now, we're going to be off to the races and running. I hope in 3 months from now, we're off to the races and running. Maybe it's 4, maybe it's 2. And pieces are being put in place to get us there, to do public disclosure of capital deployment.
Awesome. Sounds very exciting. And it sounds within a reasonable time frame as well. So that is something to look forward to.
Don't hold me to it. Like I said,
No, we're not holding you to anything. Don't worry. But very exciting. And it's been a really, really interesting conversation. So I really thank you for this, Chris. So just to conclude, really, what's next for Chris Barnes? What's next for Helios? And I guess, where do you see yourself and EOS in 10 years' time from now?
Oh, 10 years. Oh, geez. Well, okay. So what's next? I'm going to be as committed as ever. I'm being supported. Yeah, like the thing with what I do with Helios, a lot of what I do is what you see within Eden, for example. So the one thing that Helios is doing is they're providing me an opportunity to be as present as I can in the community. So if you value my presence, then thank Brock, because he is what provides that opportunity for me to not have to get a regular job, quote unquote, to pay the bills. He's helping me do that. And so I'm certainly have great gratitude for that. And that affords me the ability to have the time to continue to try to allow Eden to become something that matters in the world. Like, to me, it's more than just EOS. EOS is the first step, and it's absolutely, I'm wearing an EOS t-shirt. Like, I'm a big fan. Like I mentioned, I've been a fan since the beginning. But that's in 10 years, EOS is going to have a comeback. EOS.io, like, it's not just about EOS. Like, all of this ecosystem, I think, is going to demonstrate the value is going to aggregate to true technological advancements and prowess, which EOS.io has. We have half-a-second blocks. We've got the coalition now is working on faster finality. We're going to be 1 to 6 second finality, which then creates the opportunity for inter-blockchain communication, which then allows for horizontal scaling that then can bring us from the 4 to 10,000 transactions a second, depending on the EOS.io blockchain you look at and the numbers they produce, to hundreds of thousands of transactions a second, because we've horizontally scaled. That is all possible, and it's becoming possible. We've got EVM, so this developer base, which is hugely important in terms of the success of any of these blockchains. That's already on Telos, proven to be very successful. Coming to EOS will likely prove to be very successful. So in 10 years, we're just going to keep growing and keep building. And because we have the dedication and passion of people who have the ability to keep pushing on this and pushing in the same direction, we're going to achieve things. And so I'm going to push in the same direction as I have been for Eden. And not everyone has to agree with that. That's fine. I'm not going to stop pushing. Because I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's what we need to achieve. And in 10 years from now, can we just imagine that this Eden fractal democracy political playoff process is selecting homeowner association leaders or any mayoral? Like, we don't need to vote for presidents, but we can certainly do small towns or mayoral and mayors. Like, we can do, like, I'm in a municipality of a few thousand people. It's entirely possible that they could change the way they do an election, or even just select those from which you can then vote from. So it's not like you have to totally overturn the system, but you can tweak it. Like, why do people become the ones that are those that we vote between? So maybe we use the Eden process to select that. And maybe, like, there's lots of ways there's permutations of this that are still very valuable, and get the idea. It's all about getting the idea that we can do it differently into the minds of the people. And that is the hardest thing. It's the most important part of what you do, Michael, with media, is like getting ideas into minds, right? Like, once an idea, it's like a brush fire in the mind of men, and whatever Adam said, right? Like, this can happen, but we just got to get the idea out there. And it's why I want to work on the website, because I want to have an opportunity to point people to something, to get an idea in their head. And that is the first baby step to what can become a whole snowball avalanche of intention, recognizing there's a different way to do things. It's like any technological advancement. It's useless if only one person invents something. It needs to be something that actually spreads through merit, ideally. And that's what then can change the world. And in 10 years, we absolutely have an opportunity to make this world a better place and to do positive change. And it's day by day. We just have to be persistent and not give up. And that's what we're here. And the EOS community is, if anything, persistent and unwilling to give up.